Morning, all. All right, so we're going to talk about the Philadelphia Flyers today, do a season preview on them. Of course, the expectations are low based on last season. The Philadelphia Flyers Brain Trust, Chuck Fletcher, John Tortorella, seem to be of the mind that Philadelphia can get back into it. And by the moves that have been made, it doesn't look like management thinks they're that far off, that there hasn't been this dramatic turnover, other than, of course, trading out Claude Giroux at the deadline. This is not a team that's going to look significantly different. And of course, losing Giroux is a significant difference. So we'll start off talking about their last 5 seasons. And they had a pattern: make the playoffs, miss the playoffs. 2018, even year, they make the playoffs. They finished 42, 26, and 14 in 2017, 2018. They were 13th in goals for and 16th in goals against. So their overall numbers were good, middle of the pack team. Not a contender, but, they're in the playoffs. 2018, 2019, they fall out. 37, 37, and 8 was the record. 17th in goals for. 29th in goals against. So now they're having trouble keeping the puck out of their net. 2019, 2020, back in the playoffs. 41, 21, and 7. And at the time of the pause, I had them number one in the power rankings. They were playing so well. Everything was clicking. And then it really didn't when we got to the playoffs in the bubble. They did play well. They did knock out Montreal. They then lost against the Islanders in that next round, and they had trouble with scoring. But that year they were 6th in goals for, 10th in goals against, and things looked pretty good. And then 2020, 2021, they're in the group of death. They're in the East. The East was a tough division. They were 25, 23, and 8, missed the playoffs. They were 15th in goals for, 31st in goals against. So now they can't keep the puck out of their net again every other year. 2021, 2022, again, ends in an even number, make the playoffs. Sure, not last year. 25, 46, and 11. And again, everything that could go wrong did. The Murphy's Law team was the Flyers. They were 31st in goals for and 27th in goals against. So for the first time in this 5-year pattern, now they can't score goals either. A lot of this can be traced to injuries, and teams that make the playoffs and do well, and teams that win Stanley Cups do go through injury problems. But what ends up happening is that for teams that miss the playoffs, and if it's due to injuries, there isn't that depth there in the organization. And I think with Philadelphia, that's what we saw. That if everybody's healthy, they can definitely take a run at it. They're a good team, not a great team. And when they're dealing with major injuries, they're not going to perform all that well. And again, it felt like they kind of threw in the towel early last year. Though they started the season 4-2-1. That was a record in October. That was their best month of the year. And they had the toughest schedule of any team in the National Hockey League through the first, I think it was 15 or 20 games. So this was a team that had a tough schedule, was still winning its share of games. And I had them pretty high again on the power rankings. And then it all fell apart. By the time you reached January, which was their worst month, yeah, this was done. 1-10-2 was the record in January. Just a disaster. So when we look at their exits, remember, this is a team that's looking to foster a better bond with fans. At least you would think they'd be trying to after a disastrous season like that. They buy out Oscar Lindblom, which to me, I mean, I understand that he had a down year. I understand that they wanted to free up some money, but just from a PR standpoint, I would have recommended no. This is a team that, of course, Keith Yandle makes his exit. Well, Yandle had his Ironman streak broken, and there was all kinds of controversy about that. I understood why at the time. I understood why at the time. Florida, one of the reasons Florida traded him was they wanted to make him a healthy scratch at certain points, and they couldn't. Their hands were tied because of that Ironman streak. But yeah, it did not help that this was a team that was nowhere near a playoff spot that then is making Yandle a healthy scratch. Martin Jones exits. Jones had a good year. I thought Jones had a good year. I'm looking forward to seeing if he can follow that up with another good year. But it does leave them a bit vulnerable in net because Ivan Fedotov, who is supposed to come over, of course, he has not been allowed to come over. And so that causes issues, right? I think they envisioned him as being their backup. So it leaves them with an issue in net that we'll talk about in a second. New faces in the lineup: Nick Delorier, contract that might be a little bit rich for some. I like Delorier. I like his fight. I think he's probably the last that I look at and say there's a guy who's an enforcer and plays really well. At times, I'm not saying he's a fantastic forward or anything, but he has his moments, and so I like Delorier. I don't know that I necessarily love the cap hit, but hey, this is a team that doesn't have cap space anyway, so it's fine. It's fine. Tony DeAngelo joining this team, of course. that's the thing, and whether you love or hate D'Angelo, it's all fine and good. But again, from a PR standpoint, I mean, Carolina went through it last year. By the time that the season was over, I don't think anybody had any ill will towards them having signed D'Angelo. So if D'Angelo comes in and plays for Philly like he did for Carolina, we likely won't hear much about it. And I'm sure that having D'Angelo and Tortorella there is going to mean, well, you're going to have a lot of good press uh, clippings to put up on the board. I would imagine that at least once a week I'll be doing a news video. I'll be like, so here's what Tortorella said today, or here's what D'Angelo said after the most recent loss. And then I've also got on here in red, because he's a rookie, Tyson Forster. Forster coming off of the World Juniors. I think he played well. I think he's ready for at least a look. He's 20 years of age, so they can send him to the AHL if they want, but Forster might get in the lineup. The tandem in net, as it stands, I figure it's Carter Hart and Felix Sandstrom. Sandstrom got into some games last year, but I would not be surprised to find out Chuck Fletcher is trying to figure out the backup goaltender position. And there might be some number threes out there that could jump into Philadelphia and be that number two. We'll see what they do before the season starts, but it's possible. And again, remember, this is a team that seems to envision themselves as being in the mix. They're not in any kind of a rebuild at this point. Now, down the middle is where it gets interesting, because Sean Couturier is an excellent forward, one of the best two-way forwards in the game, and they need him back. They need him healthy. That is absolutely necessary if Philly's going to turn this around. They also need Kevin Hayes healthy. That's your 1-2 punch down the middle. Now, in the event that those guys are out, one of the others out, maybe Konechny ends up getting that spot down the middle. He's played there before. So Morgan Frost, Patrick Brown are listed as the centers on Cap Friendly down the middle. And I could see Frost having some kind of an improvement in his totals. I don't know whether they're disappointed in Frost's development or if they're okay with it or where they're at. But Patrick Brown, he's on an expiring contract, so maybe he has a good year. Knowing that his contract's up in the summer. So the channel vote, well, across both channels, it's pretty close here. 2% on both channels say first or second place for Philadelphia. Third or fourth, 4% of the Hockey Channel say third or fourth. 3% of the Entertainment Guy channel says third or fourth. So that tells you there's not a lot of optimism. You got 6% on one and 5% on the other. So yeah. Fifth or sixth, 23% of the hockey vote says, yep, fifth or sixth, 17% on Entertainment Guy. Seventh or eighth place, 71% on the Hockey Guy channel out of 25,000 plus votes. Thank you very much. And out of the 1,500 plus votes on Entertainment Guy, 78% say that Philadelphia will be seventh or eighth. So a little more pessimistic on TEG than on THG. And hey, we'll see how it turns out. The Stanley Cup odds are listed as plus 15,000. I double checked. OddsShark's back up today. That number matches up with the DraftKings number that you see on covers.com. So plus 15,000. That's what you make if you put down $100 that you will lose, because Philly's not winning the cup this year. And again, cap space, none. So that's pretty easy to cover. Top four defense, this is where things get interesting. I don't have Cam York in the top four. He's going to fight his way towards the top four spot, I do believe. Or somebody's going to get hurt and he'll jump into that spot. Ivan Provorov, Tony DeAngelo. If this ends up being your pairing, does Tony DeAngelo bring Provorov's game back? And again, DeAngelo had a very good year in Carolina. We'll see how it works for him in Philly. Travis Sanheim, Rasmus Ristolainen. Sanheim may not be a Flyer for that long if this team falls out of contention. He is on an expiring contract. He will be an unrestricted free agent next summer. So breakthrough candidates, I went with Owen Tippett, who's come over from Florida. And honestly, Tippett, I thought played better in Philly than he had in Florida. Also, he gets a better opportunity to play in Philadelphia than he would in Florida. Joel Farabee I went with as well. Farabee has shown stretches where he is a very good scorer. The trick really is that consistency. So if he gets that consistency, I think he can score 70 points in a season. He's an impressive player. So again, your coach is John Tortorella. Your GM's Chuck Fletcher. I've seen a lot of negative posts about Chuck Fletcher. My opinion is a simple one. I think based on last season, I think trying to build this up like we can get back to the playoffs seems kind of crazy, but GMs have made it work before. So leaders in goals this past season, James Van Riemsdyk with 24 was the highest goal scorer. Yeah, they were struggling to score. Cam Atkinson with 23. And of course, Atkinson has a previous relationship with Tortorella. Your assist leader was Travis Konechny with 36. Cam Atkinson had 27 to finish second on the team in assists. Special teams were not special. 12.6% on the power play, 75.7% on the penalty kill. That's a combined 88.3. Those special teams have to improve. Absolutely have to. That's a have to. You have to get that power play up to 20%, that penalty kill up to about 82%, and suddenly you would see some of these losses turning into wins. Expiring contracts, there's not a lot of big names, but at this point, I mean, outside of Giroux, Couturier, this is an interesting team that they have some good players, but it's not really superstar laden by any stretch. James Van Riemsdyk's contract's coming to an end. His contract's been talked about a lot. It still hasn't been traded by Philly. Patrick Brown, Travis Sanheim, who I think probably ends up as a rental at the deadline unless he wants to stay in Philly. And Justin Braun may very well end up being a deadline rental as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Flyers this coming season. And whether, I mean, honestly, if this works, if bringing in D'Angelo, putting Tortorella behind the bench ends up making Philadelphia a playoff team or even gets them close, Chuck Fletcher's going to deserve all the credit in the world. But we'll see how things turn out. I do have concerns in net because you can't play Carter Hart 70-plus games. Hart had a good year. For him to have another good year, they're going to need to have a good backup. And we'll see what they do with that, or maybe they go with Sandstrom. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video, and on the 5th try, I finally finished it. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.